Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Realizing Rural. Today it is my privilege to have Mayor of West Pelzer, South Carolina, Blake Sanders with us. I first met Blake at I believe it was at a South Carolina Economic Development Association conference or leadership kind of workshop in North Augusta. And this guy gets up, he's got a beard and a mustache, and I'm like, what is this guy? What is this guy going to talk about? And it really to be honest, it really blew me away, some of the content and things that you guys were doing up there. So ever since then, I know we've kind of been back and forth trading ideas and things, and I've been following everything that you guys have been doing up there in West Pelzer, and look forward to hearing a little bit about your journey and what you guys have going on up there. So thanks for taking a few minutes to come on the show.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. It's always a privilege when I get to explain what a mayor's real job is, and that's to be the chief storyteller. Because if the mayor doesn't tell a story, then you'll make up your own. So I'm honored to be here and joining you today.
That's great. So, West Pelzer, tell us a little bit, Anderson County, tell us a little bit about West Pelzer, and then I want to hear a little bit about your story and how you kind of got to the role that you're in today.
Yeah, so I start every speaking engagement with this. My name's Blake Sanders, and I'm a husband, father, landscape architect, planner, professor, and mayor. And I say that I'm a husband and father first because people matter most to me, which is why I have decided to be a public servant. My wife would tell you that a lot of times through my political career, family hasn't been first, and she and my children have kind of helped shape those values, reshape those values, so that every decision that we make in West Pelzer, we understand that it can impact those that are in Anderson County, or those that are in our great state. So a little bit about West Pelzer. We're about 1,000 in population. We are located strategically 15 minutes from Greenville, 15 minutes from Anderson, 15 minutes from Easley, 15 minutes from Simpsonville, 2 hours to Atlanta, 2 hours to Charlotte, 12 hours to New York, 12 hours to Memphis, 12 hours to Miami. We are the central location on the East Coast, is what I like to tell everyone. But the West Pelzer story is what is unique. So in the late 1890s, Captain Smythe and Francis Pelzer traveled up from Charleston to create this mill community. They dammed up the Saluda River. They were the first to take energy or electricity and put it in lines and run it to homes and to other mills. The first GE turbine is still in Pelzer and is still operational. It is signed by Thomas Edison on the side of it. But there was a guy by the name of John Franks who was really upset that Captain Smythe in particular, as the mill continued to grow, did not allow gambling, dogs, and alcohol. And the reason he didn't allow those three things is he wanted you to be committed to your job. You lived in a mill home, you shopped in a mill store, you lived by mill rules. And John Frank said, I really don't want to do that anymore. So he moved across the railroad tracks, and Christmas Eve 1913 developed this town called Frankville, which I still think is the most conceited thing that you can do, is name a town after you. And the town was bustling. It was growing. It reached 500 people. And September 13th, 1918, the aldermen got together and they voted to change the name to West Pelzer. I think that was kind of the ultimate smack in the face back to Francis Pelzer to say, we're going to name ourselves West Pelzer and steal some of your thunder and glory. And really, for 100 years after that, not a whole lot happened. And it was really sad to see the town that I had grown up in continuing to decline, the businesses leave. As a landscape architect, I was privileged to work and continue to be privileged to work across the country, developing strategic plans for cities and counties and kind of helping them improve their quality of life. And I decided I needed to what I call smoke what I sell. I got to do it at home as well. And so my wife and I were living in downtown Greenville. It was amazing. We loved it. We walked to the grocery store. We did all these great things. And we were driving through town one day, and a guy was pushing in a sign that said "For sale by owner" in this old farmhouse. So we whipped in and looked at it, and my wife said, I don't think this is for us. We're not Chip and Joanna Gaines. Let's just build a house. And I said no. Put down my executive power and said, we're going to buy this house because it's cheap, and we're going to live in our hometown again. And the very first person that pulled in the driveway to introduce himself was the chief of police. And to me, that's just struck a chord with, I need to be engaged and involved in this community. And thus, a few years later, ran for mayor.
Well, congratulations on that, and congratulations on all the success that you guys have had up there. The time before, let's take one step back, okay? Before Greenville, before West Pelzer, give us a kind of your backstory of Blake Sanders and maybe growing up in West Pelzer and how you ended up kind of, you know, so passionate about doing what you're doing today, both in the municipal world, but also in your professional life as well.
Yep. So I grew up just outside of town and spent a lot of time really just riding through it with my parents to go to church, or had friends in the area. I knew it kind of superficially as a community that had one police officer, that you didn't speed through town. That's kind of how I understood the town growing up. My parents are both blue collar workers. I consider my dad to be one of the last that could not go to college. He started at Michelin in 1981 sweeping floors, and retired in 2015 in executive leadership running recyclables for North America, still for Michelin. And so I had this strong work ethic that I knew I wanted to continue to expound upon and be dedicated, because I saw the dedication that both of them had in their employment worlds. But I told Dad when I was in high school, I don't want to live here. I don't like it here. It's too small. People are just chirpy about things. And Dad said, watch your mouth, son, because that's going to bite you one day, probably. And so I went off to college, went to Clemson, decided that I was going to be an ag teacher. I did 1 year at Clemson. I'm not ashamed to say it now. I had a 1.8 GPA. I didn't know that you just couldn't goof off in college, that you actually had to study and do work. And I told my parents that I want to drop out of school. I just want to get a job and work. And Dad said, well, that's fine. If you want to drop out of school, get a job. So I did. I got a job at Southern Wesleyan University in their maintenance department. Southern Wesleyan had just changed from Central Wesleyan College to Southern Wesleyan. They were going through some growth. I was the chief grass cutter and weed eater. That's what I did 40 hours a week. And a guy by the name of Mike King, when they were placing some new apartments, they were meeting with the architect. He invited me to the meeting, and he said, you're going to have to cut this grass when they build it. So I want to make sure you see what they're planning, how they're laying it out, and you can weigh in on how steep the slopes are and that sort of thing. And after that meeting, he said, "Hey, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's this profession called landscape architecture, and I think you'd be really good at it. You should, let me introduce you to Don Collins, who's the chair of landscape architecture at Clemson, and you guys just talk to each other." So I went and met with Don, and Don told me that I wasn't qualified to be a landscape architect and I needed to go somewhere else. And I said, well, I think this is what I want to do. And talked to my parents and dove into landscape architecture and found that love of transforming places. Landscape architecture at the time at Clemson was very design oriented. It was ran by professionals that understood how to take students and kind of place them in certain areas or niches for the profession that they needed to be in. And a guy by the name of Umit Yilmaz and Don Collins saw that I was a community-oriented landscape architect and pushed me to work for firms that saw the big picture in communities. And so I spent time working in Atlanta. I spent time working in Colorado with Design Workshop, and really got to work across the world and start to bring some of that knowledge back home as a landscape architect. I'm blessed to have worked in 48 states on projects ranging from streetscapes and greenways to strategic plans to financing plans for cities. And I say it a lot, and you'll probably hear me say this a lot. I am blessed. I'm blessed to be the first in my household or my family to graduate from college. I'm blessed that I was chosen by the people to serve, and I know that God will continue to bless me in future endeavors, whether it be professionally or as a public servant.
Well, I see that tiger paw on your shirt there, and I'm a Clemson grad as well, so we won't talk any. We'll just talk. We will not talk any football today. We'll
Yeah,
just leave
thank
it
you.
at that to keep the conversation positive. But I tell you that whole Clemson area in the upstate where you guys are kind of nestled up there is such a beautiful area. I spent several years up there, and then also in downtown Greenville. I was fortunate enough to go to the MBA program at Clemson, and so that downtown Greenville area. And speaking of transformation, the way that they have been able to transform downtown Greenville and create just such a great culture and atmosphere up there has been something that I think a model for people all across the country really is what we're starting to see. Talk about the upstate in general, and I know you did some work in the upstate with some of the different programs up there. Talk about some of the work you've done up there, and let's just talk upstate in general transformation. And then we'll talk West Pelzer, and then eventually I want to circle back to Barmel and what some of the kind of the things we're working on down here as well.
Absolutely. So we like to position the upstate as the 10 counties. So we call it the 10 at the top. And there's been a transformation along the entire 85 corridor as it relates to job creation, quality of life, which I'll include parks and recreation as part of that. We have seen an enormous increase in growth from residential, specifically folks moving from the Northeast and the Deep South, kind of we call them halfbacks, but moving halfway back home. So we have seen tremendous increase in the amount of disposable income, if you will, when we think about new businesses and new opportunities. I like to think a lot about the 10 counties at the upstate, that none of us are in competition with each other, and that we all kind of talk to each other, whether that's the counties or the cities. We know Anderson County Economic Development knows what Greenville County Economic Development is working on. So we make sure not to step on each other's toes, because we're all pulling from the same well. I have been fortunate to work in all 10 counties and work in most of the municipalities as it relates to their strategic planning for that growth. So the first project I always like to talk about is the Swamp Rabbit Trail. In 2007, I was a budding landscape architect who was sitting in my boss's office, who said, "Hey, I've got this kind of linear park project. I don't know who wants to work on it, but if anybody does, come see me. We're going to meet this afternoon to kick off the project." So I raised my little hand and said, "Hey, we're in a recession. I don't want to lose my job. I'll volunteer for anything." And that afternoon, I met a guy by the name of Ty Houck, who was organizing the first 9 miles of greenway that would connect Greenville and Travelers Rest. That project really transformed my career and took me from thinking about parks as just a place to go with your children or to hang out at. It transformed it, and for me, knowing that it influenced quality of life and it influenced the economics. That project that has 700,000 people a year using it, that has a $30 million economic impact on Greenville and Travelers Rest. That project really it did lead to working on other projects. The Green Crescent Trail, which connects Clemson, Anderson, Pendleton, and Central together, which is under development, working with Pendleton and the amount of growth that they have seen, working on streetscapes in downtown Greenville, working in Lawrence County, Lawrence City on some of their square development, and how do we keep people inside of city limits to spend their money. And then I do a lot of marketing and a marketing analysis for cities as well. And so, say for West Pelzer, our population is 1,000, but our 15-minute drive time is 60,000. And so, how do I make sure that those 60,000 people, when they think about a place to go out to eat or to go have a beer or to go see a play, that they think about this area first, or at least is top of their mind, and that we give them opportunities to keep that money close to home. I will say that there has been and continues to be a lot of discussion about growth in the area, and no matter how much you plan for smart growth, that there's always some bad that comes along with it. And, how do you plan for the infrastructure for future developments? How do we plan for road improvements that are failing statewide? Are we talking to the school board and specifically the schools about capacity? What do impact fees look like? So there's a lot of other conversations that come along with that with that growth.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. You're kind of positioned in an interesting position because West Pelzer, I think at that population level, and you're kind of, at least I would consider you rural, but not really rural, right? So it's an interesting kind of dynamic there. And then so you've got a lot to offer people. When you talk about Barnwell, obviously one of the challenges that we have here is we need to continue, and it's a priority. As you know, I'm on council here, and so it's a priority for us now and will be in the future. Is trying to we want people to live here and play here in addition to work here, right? So we have a lot of companies. We're fortunate to have some really, really great companies close by, and some located within the county. Some, obviously the Savannah River site really close by. Federal, a lot of federal programs out there. What happens a lot of times is we miss out on some of these people living in Barnwell County, right? So and one of those things, in my opinion, is the quality of life aspect. And so when I say quality of life, I mean there's a lot of things that go into that. Broadband, which is certainly important, and things of that nature. But then there's also just general quality of life for people. So when you're trying to attract people to downtown West Pelzer, we've got three municipalities, as you're aware, in the county here. We've got Blackville, Williston, and Barnwell. As they're also trying to attract people too, right? So from the Aiken area coming in, what's the strategy there, and how can we start to? I'd love to get your opinion on how we could start to try to change and improve that narrative around Barnwell County.
Yep. So I have to start first with in January 1st, 2016, when I took office as mayor, we had 0% occupancy in our downtown. We had a flower shop that is still in existence today, and maybe a salon, but that was it. We didn't have anything. The town of Pelzer, they didn't have anything, and Williamston was kind of our big brother, but they were missing some opportunities as well. One of the first things that we did was develop a market analysis and study that determined why people were leaving. There's some amazing data out there. We all know that our phones are tracked and our credit cards are tracked. There's some amazing companies that put that information together so that we saw, okay, people that are shopping at our local grocery store, where are they coming from? Where are they stopping before they get there, and where's their first stop after? And so we could kind of start to look at how people were moving, at least in our Tri-City area. The three mayors got together, and we all funded that study, and we also all shared it with each other, and we meet regularly. We call ourselves the Three Amigos. We get together for a drink of choice. And we talk about what each other are doing so that we do not cause competition amongst the three cities. We share our event calendars, we cross promote, we cross pollinate. We want you to go to the high school football game in Williamston, but choose to eat dinner in West Pelzer before you go, and we all help promote that. There's only one community theater that's in Pelzer. We all promote that as that's our local theater. We do not say it's the town of Pelzer's local theater. We say that's our local theater. The other thing that we have our local municipal association through Anderson County that puts all the mayors and councils together once a quarter to discuss not only local policies, but local issues, local opportunities, our successes. And so the mayors get together regularly and share what's going on. It helps us because, and I've got a single story from this, but it helps us because we're able to share how economic development incentives are working in Pendleton, which is a much larger city than us, but is not as large as Anderson. So Anderson now has 3 hotels in downtown, and Pendleton saying, well, we don't want one in downtown, but how are you guys handling Airbnbs or VRBOs? So anyway, so we get to talk about those things. It also allows us to share the contacts. And so there are many businesses in Anderson County that have multiple locations. And so Rains on Main is the restaurant example that I always give. They have a Pendleton location, they have a Belton location, and they have a Williamston location. And they ran their own market analysis to determine that, hey, we can have three of these and feed the entire county, and people will know us as the place to go get a great burger and a great set of wings. That would not have happened had our chamber, our municipal association, and the mayor's not been able to get together and share, hey, that's a great business. They're looking for a third location. You need to make sure you're at that table. So I think it's all about communication, and I say this regularly, and I know that you've heard it, Councilman, but we're not in competition with each other. The 271 municipalities and the 46 counties are not in competition. We need to support and help each other, and know that there are strengths in West Pelzer that the city of Barnwell doesn't have, and that there are strengths of Barnwell that West Pelzer will never achieve. And we have to be okay with those things.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've tried to have in both my professional career and also on council is and what I like to call an abundance mentality, right? There's enough out there for everybody. There's enough food at the table for everybody to eat. And if we can work together, there will continue to be, right? So I think that abundance mentality is important. But at the same time, when you do start talking about different municipalities, and there is a little tension sometimes there. How when you're in the room and those either tensions occur or maybe they were there and you had to help, were part of the process to kind of break down those tensions. What were some of those steps that kind of broke down those tensions? Because to your point, our a lot of times as county officials, when we're talking to other counties, or I'm sure the same is true for the municipalities when we're talking to other municipalities, we see boundaries, we see lines, we see county lines, we see municipal lines. Citizens, companies, they do not see the lines. They don't care, as you know. Well, no, they don't. They do not care if a business is in the city of Barnwell or Allendale or something like that. So, how do you start to break down in those meetings, break down those tensions and encourage that cooperation?
Yeah. So we're blessed in Anderson County, and I may speak a little bit out of turn, but I think 6 mayors or so of the 7 or 8 municipalities are self-employed or own their own business, and so we all understand the networking aspect professionally. That a lot of times your friends are your clients, and they were your friends first and became your clients later. And so for at least our 3 municipalities, Pelzer, West Pelzer, and Williamston, that are close together, the mayors are friends first and foremost. And so just 6 weeks ago, I was in the hospital with a serious health scare, and those 2 mayors were by my side. They were the ones calling or texting saying, hey, just want to check on you, but also want to let you know we sent our guys over to help with a water leak that was happening. Or, hey, I know you had this meeting scheduled with the chamber. I'll fill in for you. Don't worry about it. And so when we get together, we're asking about, how's your kids doing? Hey, Will, how's the theater doing? Do you have enough contributions? Can we help raise money for you? Then we get to talk business afterwards. We also all share, same or similarities in what we like to do for fun or enjoying our quality of life, whether it's helping out at the school or volunteering with the PTO, or we all like to be on the lake, or we're out hiking. We do those things together anyway. And so it makes conversations a whole lot easier amongst the mayors and specifically or particularly the 3 of us. The other thing, though, to think about for those mayors that perhaps can't be friends, and I've been in a lot of communities where the municipalities are standoffish with each other, is that there has to be a common ground somewhere, whether that's the common ground for holistic approach to jobs or infrastructure, or perhaps there's a singular project that they can get together with the delegation to talk about. there has to be some sort of common ground to come together. And frankly, not to talk national politics, but that's probably what we need from the federal level all the way down to the local level is some sort of common ground that we can all get behind and start to promote each other and be selfless promoters of each other.
Yeah, when we're all pulling in the same direction, I tell people all the time we don't have to agree on 100% of the things, right? But and certainly if we talked long enough, we would not we would find some stuff that we disagree with,
That's
but
right.
we're going to agree on a whole lot more than we disagree on. So we have to find those common grounds and try to build from there. And I think that you know it's an interesting thing in Barnwell, and as specifically, I'll speak for the counties because sometimes we do get in competition, or you're always watching what your neighbor's doing, right? And so I think it's important for us to, and I think we do a good job of that with our Southern Carolina Alliance, and we're starting to cooperate as more of a region, and I think that's important. We've always, or for the last several years, we've cooperated as a region for economic development. But I think there's another step that's starting to occur when you start talking about quality of life, housing, things like that. That I think is extremely important because it's one thing to cooperate as economic development, but it's another to cooperate in quality of life and other aspects, and that's what you guys are clearly doing up there. I want to circle down to the downtown area. We've got several in Barnwell County and Allendale County. We've got several. It wouldn't take you long as you drive around to see there. There's a lot of empty store fronts. Some of the storefronts that are occupied are not as well kept as maybe some people would like. When you start talking about downtown development, when you first drove around West Pelzer and you said, this is going to be my goal is to get these occupied and to get these looking nice. What was step one, and then kind of how did that progression take place?
Yeah. So step one for us was kind of figuring out what we wanted it to look like, just purely aesthetically. We knew it looked bad. So how do we make it look better, and what are the funding avenues to do so? We were blessed to receive a hometown economic development grant from the municipal association. It was $25,000 that allowed us to hire a consultant to come in to kind of help identify one, the market study that I've talked about. What are we leaking? What can we support? But then also help us kind of look at each building and go, okay, this building is X number of square feet. It has a great spot for a kitchen in the back. Let's make sure this one is a restaurant. Let's make sure this one would make a great, I don't know, gentleman's barber shop, or this one would make a great tap room. So first step was to identify the buildings, the property owners, what the purchase price or lease price would be if it were to be available, then also the funding mechanisms of how we were going to make those look good, or what incentives were we willing to give. The actual first step for the town of West Pelzer, though, having 100% vacancy or 0% occupancy, was that government took the first step. And so town hall was in a building that was probably 800 square feet. The mayor didn't have an office. The police chief didn't have an office. The town administrator sat at a folding table. I mean, it was as redneck could get. And so government took the first step and did a general obligation bond, which is a bond against your property taxes. And we purchased an old parts store that was on Main Street. And what should have been $1 million project, we did for about 300,000. Just with volunteer labor of painting walls. I hung doors. I mean, anything, we had, speaking of partnerships, the neighboring mayor, Mayor Burgess in Williamston, came and ran all of our Cat 5 cable for our internet at cost. So we had a lot of partnerships going on, but government took the first step. So we made the first investment of $500,000. We built a park beside our new city hall. We paved the parking lot, just some little improvements, which then led to people recognizing, oh, that would make a great business beside there because they're open 8 to 5 and they've got constant traffic coming in and out of City Hall. What can we put there? And so I literally started meeting with people and saying, I've got this building. This market study says this would work here. Here's what we're leaking. This is what this business needs to be. Are you interested? And so the very next business was an antique store. The business beside it became an hibachi restaurant. The one beside it became a women's boutique. The one beside it then became a meat and three. The tap room came behind one of the buildings. The coffee shop came, a little bit later at the intersection, and then a gentleman's barber shop. And we were very strategic with every one of those, that we wanted it not to be a chain, and we wanted it to be locally owned. Locally owned meaning that the owner was in there working, because we knew that people from West Pelzer and our market area needed that personal touch. I love what you're doing as an individual, but if you opened up a business in West Pelzer, it probably wouldn't be as successful, because people don't know Daniel Alexander, and they'd go in and say, "Who's this Daniel guy that owns this business, and is he ever here?" And so for us, that was important. I will say that we had failures with that. We took the approach with a pizza place that was their second location. We had an individual open up a coffee shop early on, perhaps a little bit premature, and those businesses didn't make it. COVID didn't help with that, but they didn't make it. But we celebrated their successes, and even in their failures, we made sure that they landed on their feet somewhere else, or at their other locations. But it was important to meet individually with those business owners or prospective business owners, know what the price of the property was, know, or the lease price was, and know that their business would work, and feel comfortable and confident about it. The final thing that government did was we put together an economic development ordinance, which is allowed by state law, and it's not part of the Bailey bill, so it doesn't require county participation. But what we did, we were able to grant back business license, building permit fees, increase in property tax, and hospitality tax for certain businesses. And so we knew that, say, the antique shop was not one that received an economic development incentive, but the first restaurant was. We knew that we needed a sit-down restaurant downtown, and we were willing to grant back money that we had not allocated for. And so incentive, and I know this is a hot topic at the state level, but incentive packages can drive future economic development, and that's what it did in West Pelzer. So we didn't allocate for the $40,000 that this restaurant was going to generate in property tax and hospitality tax. We didn't budget for that, so we were able to give back a percentage to them for their improvements, specifically for their facade, for outdoor dining, and for interior improvements to make it a restaurant. Just by giving a $15,000 incentive to that restaurant, it made them feel welcome, wanted. But then they also told their friends, "Hey, I know you've been wanting to open up this boutique. I got a really hot spot for you. The mayor's kind of cool, and he's creative with how he can get some funding to work for you guys." So, the women's boutique, again, not a huge generator of revenue, but we'll gladly, give you back your business license and your building permit fees so that you will open up in our town. And we did that until we got full. And now that we're full, we can kind of tuck that economic development incentive ordinance in our back pocket and save it for perhaps some larger projects that would make maybe a much greater impact in our region.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you bring. Encouraging people through, I mean, what as municipalities and counties, encouraging people through what we're doing as government, but then also giving them these financial incentives to expand or take a chance. And a lot of those, I think that's a great idea, and trying to work on a way to encourage people to take that chance, because some people just need a little extra encouragement to take that chance for a second location or whatever it may be. How did you deal, and it may be a little different in your situation, but I'm sure other places that you've dealt with in the past. So there's also places that maybe they have existing businesses, or there's an owner and they rent out the space, right? So it's not that, so dealing with working on the facade, because when you drive through, I actually drove through West Pelzer the other day. It looked really nice, right? When you drive through different places, it doesn't take you long to kind of either make an opinion, right? Positive or negative. You're either saying this place is up and coming and happening, or I don't know about this place, right? And so a lot of that is not necessarily what's going on the inside of the building. I mean, that's certainly important, but a lot of that is what's on the outside of the building, right? And so how do you encourage some of these either building owners that aren't necessarily the businesses to improve their facade? And then did you put any kind of like ordinance around what they could or couldn't have, or what they, how did you strike that balance?
Yep. So for the facades, we've done it a couple of different ways. We've tried the facade grant program where we'll match dollar for dollar for any improvements that you want to make. We do that first and foremost because we want to give them an opportunity to kind of put their best foot forward. In cities and communities that I've worked in where the individuals aren't as in tune to make the improvements, but they don't mind the improvements, we do a construction easement for the facade of the building, and we tell the building owners and business owners that we're gonna have a drawing done by an architect of the entire facade of all of the buildings with new awnings or new paint or lights or whatever it may be, and local government is going to pay for it, and we're going to make the improvements across the entire board. Because to your point, if it doesn't look like you're open for business, then the chances are you're not open for business. So specifically communities that are doing so or have done so, Conway, Casey, Lakeview, those are communities. Central is one that have taken the approach of let's look at this holistically and determine how we can put groups of buildings together to make those improvements. Those funds can come from, general fund, hospitality tax, A tax. It can be grant related. For the upstate, we used Appalachian Regional Commission a lot for economic development projects as far as job creation. And even facade improvements create jobs, albeit minimum, they do create opportunities and jobs. One thing I do like though about doing it kind of holistically with say 3 or 4 businesses or an entire block of facades is that you can start to have cohesion amongst businesses that perhaps aren't cohesive businesses. And so, for instance, in West Pelzer, the hibachi style restaurant, the antique store, and the tap room really don't have anything in common with each other. They don't share the same clientele, but their signs hang together. And they all 3 of those businesses work in unison with their outdoor tables look the same. That was one way we spent some ARPA funds so that everyone had tables that looked identical, or their awnings were all improved at the same time, or we pressure washed everything together and not just allow one business owner to pressure wash. Let's do it all. So anyway, so we definitely have the businesses work together to make a larger impact when local government wants to get involved and do so. The other thing that we do, and this is the second part of your question, kind of how did you influence what people went where, or kind of how that worked. We don't allow certain businesses in our central business district. We don't allow check into cash places, auto parts store, motorcycle shops, tattoo parlors, CBD places. Those all have a place somewhere in the community, but not in our central business district. And prior to the development of our small downtown, we wrote the ordinance that didn't allow any of those things, and we also passed a vacant building tax. And so the tax is only implemented on your annual tax bill when you choose not to do anything with your property. It does not mean that you have to rent or lease your property or use your property. It just means it has to be up to code. Because dilapidated buildings can bring down the rest of a community, whether if they don't have a roof or they don't have windows or they're boarded up. And so we passed that so that the fire marshal and the building codes official gets to see all of those vacant buildings every year and make sure they're up to code and look good. If not, then they have to pay a tax annually that compounds over time until they bring it up to code. It's minimal, but it encourages those building owners that choose not to lease those out to at least bring them up to code, because we don't want one to burn and burn an entire downtown, or fall apart and bring down the value of an entire downtown.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. The circling back, what was the name of the program where the government, where basically you guys would, or let's say you were saying in Casey, where they'll go in and they'll kind of just do a block of buildings. What'd you call that? Like a construction
Um,
easement, something?
They did. They do a construction easement for the facade of the building so that it's written that the building owner is allowing them to make improvements. At the end of the construction, upon final completion, then the easement is null and void, and the improvements go
I
back
got you.
to the private property owner. And it just allows one cohesive look across the front. That construction easement is very similar to what communities do when they want to place a mural on the side of a building. they'll get a construction easement to do the mural and then give it back to them.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, I tell you, the downtown, what you guys have been able to do, and is really impressive. And I know you were recently. My understanding is from reading, you guys were recently awarded a from the Municipal Association. I think it was called a Strong Cities Award of Excellence. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that entails?
Yeah, so every year they have different categories for municipalities to submit significant projects that have impacted the region or community that can also be replicable so that other municipalities can learn from. So they have them for public works and for economic development. Ours was specific to our planning. As a planner by trade, I believe that you have to plan not only for what you want, but for what the future holds. But you also have to plan for kind of what you messed up in the past as well to make sure you don't make those same mistakes. We started in 2016 what we call our Rural Renewal Master Plan. It's extremely difficult to say, and that will be the only time I ever say it. And we should have created a better name for it. But it was intended to be 5 years of planning, so that one, we could see how we were doing and have checkpoints along the way, of kind of screen checks of did we do what the consultants told us to do. But it also told all of staff and the elected officials that plans are malleable and things change over time. And so you can't do a plan in year one and expect it to still be relevant in year 5, knowing that the economy has changed or the president has changed or we had a global pandemic in the middle of this. Your plan's not the same anymore. Annually, for 5 years, we hired a consultant to come in and update our plan, give us the new ideas. What's fresh? Why is this happening in the world? Why is retail decreasing, but our retail is increasing? What do we need to do differently? Over 5 years, we were able to combat some of those enormous challenges that the world was facing. So in year 3 of this plan is when COVID hit. And it was, okay, we've got this plan going on. We've got restaurants that are struggling, retail that's struggling. What do we need to plan for? And so that's when we decided, okay, well, we need a cohesive look to our downtown. We need outdoor furnishings. We need string lights. We need all these things that all these cities talk about. We know we need them now, even though they were long range plans for us. We need them today to implement now. So we were able to kind of change our plans. The other reason we received the Strong Cities Award is because we structure every decision we make financially based off of what the ROI or the return on investment will be for the taxpayers. So I love spending money with the best of them. I love new Clemson shirts and I love my bass boat, but I know that there has to be a return at some point for this shirt. This shirt was $19. I've got to be able to wear it, for 4 years to get my money out of it. That's just how my brain works. With the ARPA funds and the COVID relief funds, we structured through our plan a way so that those replicated themselves every 5 years. And so little old West Pelzer, we only received, $400,000 from ARPA that we were trying to determine how we were going to allocate. We had all our department heads, chomping at the bits. How do we get some of that money? But we structured it so that every dollar spent had 25 cents returned back annually, so that every 4 years, and the reason we did that was so that the next mayor would have essentially an ARPA account that they would get to work with, and the next mayor after that would have an ARPA account that they would get to work with, because that meant the world to a struggling municipality to be able to reimburse those funds. And so the Rural Renewal Master Plan really was transformative for us, and it allowed us, receiving the Strong Cities Award allowed us to tell that story to other cities that perhaps, and counties, that only do plans every 10 years because that's what the Planning Enabling Act requires them to do. We do them annually, and it makes a difference, and West Pelzer is stronger because we plan annually for those things.
Yeah, and that annual planning, I think that's one of my, and we're trying to do a better job. That's probably one of my frustrations when I first was elected, is that, we had this, take a look, councilman, take a look at this comprehensive plan. I'm like, well, this plan was created in, I think, at 2010. I mean,
Yeah.
things things have changed. I was still, in college when this thing was
Yeah.
created, and so I think that annual update, that's a great way to kind of make sure you're staying on top of things. And congratulations on receiving that award and that recognition and being able to, as chief storyteller. I know that you were very happy and proud to be able to tell that and share that story with other municipalities and other counties to be able to encourage them to do something similar.
Yeah, no, it was so amazing to be in the room with all 271 cities and them recognize, little old West Pelzer. I joked with Todd Glover as I was standing on stage receiving the trophy. I joked with Todd that there's more people in this room right now than live in West Pelzer. Like that's how amazing it was for us to receive that award and to see the previous winners of that award, Kiowa Island. It's like, how are we in the same boat as Kiowa Island for receiving this award for planning for a certain size population? It blew us away. We just thought we were doing something really cool that impacted us. We didn't realize that it was something that statewide would be recognized as, look at what they're doing and it's important. So it was a humbling experience.
Yeah, and congratulations. Yeah, that is awesome, and a testament to not only this past year's work, but to your point, this is years of planning and execution to make something like that happen. Now, my understanding, I believe, reading that you're this could be the last term of Mayor Sanders. Is that correct, or what's the future hold for you?
Yes. So I announced earlier this year in July that I would not be seeking reelection. It was a tough decision. My wife and my children and I talked about it a lot. Really, all they know from their time in school is everybody knows their dad's the mayor. Their dad's the guy that can get it done. I always come talk to their social studies class or American histories class about local government. So it was a tough decision, but I felt like I had achieved the goals that I set out for West Pelzer. We had created policies over the 8 years that couldn't be, or I guess they could be undone, but they created a baseline for future mayors to work off of. We don't have to worry about funding mechanisms or HR policies or just building policies. We created all those things to make my job a little easier, which in turn will make the next mayor's job easier. I think it's also relevant that we continue to think about that there are other people in waiting, that I was once that individual in waiting that had all these ideas and was chomping at the bits. I'm not always the smartest person in the room, the fastest person in the room, nor the strongest person. And so I didn't groom anyone. I didn't specifically set out to say, you're the next, you're going to be the next mayor here and let me help you. I announced cold that I wasn't running, knowing that my mayor pro tem has signed up, who has been with me, been my mayor pro tem for 7 of my 8 years, that he could gladly take those reins, that he has new ideas, and that age is just a number, both in the younger range and also in the older range. When I took over as mayor, I was the second youngest mayor in the state, behind Mayor Terrence Colbert, who has now passed away. So for an older municipality to elect a younger person, and my mayor pro tem, who is running unopposed, is 74 years old, who has fresh ideas and is raring to go and probably has the heart and brain of a 30-year-old. So age is just a number. For me, we have continued to prayerfully consider what opportunities there may be at a state or federal level. I continue to believe that God is leading Blake Sanders into an area of public service that can touch a larger population, whether that's at the county level, the state level, or the federal level, or the congressional level. My hope is that I have an opportunity in 2024 to be on the ballot for a state position that can help move either my House or Senate district forward, and see what opportunities are there. And I continue to talk with our House, our legislative delegation, and specifically my House rep to kind of talk about what that transition looks like. We have been blessed with Representative Thayer to serve since 2011 in House District 9. And when she chooses to vacate that position, I would gladly step in and make a run for that seat. And so we'll continue to prayerfully consider, as I know that Representative Thayer and her husband Mark continue to prayerfully consider what those next steps will look like. I know that Senator Cash is part of our area, is doing a phenomenal job, and I know that elected officials such as myself will never challenge any of the incumbents up here that are making a difference, and that's what's important. Again, I talk about the mayors working together. To have a delegation that works together is something that you can't put a price tag on, regardless of their politics or their caucuses. We know that we're stronger together. And our delegation definitely understands that. So hopefully I'll be able to make an announcement, in a few weeks or a few months about where God will take that next path for me. And when I do, you'll be the first to know.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you're staying involved and going to prayerfully consider and continue to be involved. And I know you'll be involved no matter what happens. Well, no matter what the ultimate plan is, you're going to continue to be involved through your business, and then also in the community. And that family aspect is really important. I have two little girls as well, and it's important to me. I think about that a lot, and balancing that time, those meetings, trying to figure out what's, as you get invited to a lot of different things, and what's important and what's not saying it's not important, but at some point your family is most important. And then also just keeping that mentality of, hey, making a difference in the local area. But the reality is the people that really, if you go outside and you said, who's the mayor of West Pelzer, nobody in Barnwell is going to know. They're not even going to know where West Pelzer is. And likewise, if you go out on the street and ask them where Barnwell is, they may likely point toward Myrtle Beach. I mean, they have no idea, and they certainly don't know who Daniel Alexander is. So I think that's one thing that really kind of keeps me grounded. But the people who do care and that do know are your family, right? And those are the people that are gonna know and care for a long, long time. And so I think that's one of the things that I think about a lot is trying to keep that balance is extremely important. I
agree.
go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to say, and that's why I opened with my husband and father, and I've strayed from that. And my wife has been a phenomenal resource and backbone to kind of pull me back and say, hey, I know this is important to you, but you realize you've been in meetings every night this week, and like you haven't had dinner with the kids, or you haven't been outside, and your son wants to go fishing. She's pulled me back a few times and said, get your priorities straight before you think about the next meeting you're gonna go to. So we're all blessed to have those that are around us, our spouses and children and partners that can help keep us grounded in the right direction, or pointed
That's
in the
right.
right
No, there's no doubt. I tell people all the time. I'm my wife is the backbone of our family.
direction.
She keeps everything moving. So I want to close. I know we're coming up kind of at the end here. I want to close. I close with several questions at the end. Every guest, kind of let everybody get to know you just a little bit more. It's going to be several questions. One word, one sentence, whatever comes to your mind. Just let us have it. Okay. So, first of all, just before we start this, because this will kind of be the close, just thanks for your time, and appreciate you really coming on today. I know it's inspiring to hear stories from. That's my goal with Realizing Rural, is to tell the local story, right, with local people, but also, South Carolina. There's great stories all around South Carolina and how these communities have. So your testimony and your vision and execution has been really inspiring to me, and I know it will be to a lot of people across the state, and will be to a lot of people that listen to this. So I really appreciate your time coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, really appreciate it. So here we go. As we close, what is one thing you love most as you travel around? What is one thing you love most about rural areas in South Carolina?
People can tell the story. People get you excited about it. People are what makes South Carolina great, specifically our rural areas.
How do you recharge and find inspiration in your daily life?
I spend time with my children, whether that's fishing, whether it's playing pickleball, whether it's just being outside. My children are my refreshers, or my Gatorade, if you will.
And that kind of leads into the next one. What's your favorite outdoor activity or hobby?
I love to fish. I have fished since I was a child. My dad used to pick me up from school with the boat behind. My son is on the fishing team now. I would rather be on the water than anywhere else.
I like to catch. I'm not a big fisherman. I like to catch. So if you can put me on some fish, I'll come with you. But if we're, there's some people that just like to fish. I tell people I like to catch. So I'll come fishing
Yeah.
if you put me on some fish.
I
What
can't
is,
promise.
what is one? That's part of the challenge, I guess, right? What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Listen to your elders. Your elders know best. Your elders will point you in the right direction, and they've been there and they've done that before.
What is your favorite movie or TV show and why?
Oh, don't laugh. I love Forrest Gump. And I don't know why. It has been my favorite movie since it came out in '96. My others would be the Indiana Jones Crusades, or the more than a trilogy now. The reason I say that, I remember my dad taking me to see, I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I recently took my daughter when we were on vacation to see the most recent Indiana Jones film. And it was just kind of making that full circle.
Yeah, that's
Back.
really cool. Really cool. What is one misconception about rural life that you would like to dispel?
We're not all morons, redneck, uneducated, poor people. When people say rural upstate South Carolina, that's immediately what they think is that's probably a hillbilly. And while I may look like one with a long beard, we are some of the smartest people that you will ever meet, regardless of how urban or rural your area is.
What is one thing as you kind of leave your position? What is one thing you believe your local community needs to continue to thrive and grow?
To continue to thrive and grow, we have to protect our boundaries and not allow suburban sprawl or growth from Anderson or Greenville to impact us. We make our own decisions. Let's preserve our boundaries and protect our open space.
Gonna give you a chance to brag on yourself a little bit. I know sometimes that's hard for a lot of people. Tell us a personal or a professional accomplishment that you're most proud of.
Hmm. I am. This is a difficult one. I'm most proud to be the first in my family to graduate from college. I'm proud that I passed all of my licensure exams to be a licensed landscape architect, which wasn't the easiest thing in the world. But none of those give me the honor as much as it does to be a loving husband and father, and I'll take that honor any day.
Yeah. And then is there, as you kind of sit back and look at your life, is there a certain quote or mantra that comes to mind that you try to live by?
Um, th- there's a handful, and I could probably look around on my walls and see some of the quotes that people have given me that are framed or some of the boards. And I don't remember the specific verse in the Bible, but I remember my father going on a mission trip when I was probably in elementary school, maybe middle school. And he had a shirt, and it's from Isaiah, and I think it's Isaiah 55:10, but I could be wrong. But it says, "Here I am, send me." And for me, growing up, seeing my father going on a mission trip, I was like, "Oh, what does that mean? Is it biblical? Is he a missionary? Is he coming back from Mexico? Like, I don't know what's going on." But now I use that as, "Here I am, send me. Let God use my talents to transform West Pelzer. I'm here. I'm willing, and I'm a servant of the faith and a servant of the people." So here I am, send me is my favorite quote right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, Blake, thanks again for coming on today. Really appreciate your time. It's interesting. We'll have you on sometime in the future. And another interesting perspective I'd like to get your take on as you kind of continue your journey is there is a lot of emphasis being put on rural. The positive is there's a lot of emphasis from the state level being put on rural areas, and so I think it's important for people in Barnwell County, Allendale County, all around the state that are in these rural areas that really have an opportunity over the next 5 to 10 years to take advantage of some of the momentum. The urban areas are starting to realize that there needs to be a focus on rural, and so some of the state representatives, at every just about every conference that I go to, they're talking rural, and they're actually not only talking it, they're actually living it as well. And it takes time, but they're actually putting some money money behind it. And so it's exciting to me. And I'd love to have you back on to kind of have that broader level discussion. But look forward to continuing to follow your journey, and really appreciate your time, Mayor.
I appreciate you anytime. I'd love to be back on to talk about any subject. So I thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to listening to some of the future attendees for your podcast as well.
All right, sounds great. Thanks a lot. Talk soon.
All right. Thanks.